Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our water tutorial. So from where we left off, we created a water using normals, as well as creating the diffuse to change the water color. So this time we're going to be making the environment work with our water, such as the sun reflecting off the water's surface, as well as how the water interacts with whatever it touches along the edges. So I'm going to import uh, two more, or actually 4 more images into my water texture. Let's see here. I'm going to input my specular, my displacement, my diffuse, bubble diffuse, and my other displacement. And I'm going to import that into my package. So here we have some more images that we're going to be using within our water material. So I'm going to open up my material editor and I'm going to begin constructing. So first I'm going to start using some of these materials that I've imported in here. Just going to drag and drop my water diffuse, my water displacement, and my water specular. I'm going to move these to the side so I can have some better workspace. Duplicate this one to achieve our water effect. And now I'm going to add some panners to animate. So I'm going to duplicate this several times using Control-C, Control-V. And I'm going to plug all these guys in. And once again, the panners are merely a node that makes the material itself start animating within a certain direction that you specify through the X and Y axis, which is a 2D plane. So I'm going to just click on all these materials here so that we can see the changes that are happening here. So I'm going to make this the value of this. You could just copy the values I'm inputting here. And as you can see, our materials are moving in real time. So now I'm going to add some texture coordinates here because some of my textures aren't the proper 1024 by 1024 size. So I'm going to blow these up a little bit. Since these two textures are 1024 by 1024, I'm going to leave them as is. So I'm just going to increase this up to 1.6. 1.6. And then use a time node to make these two textures keep on the same time loop. Alrighty, so now that we have all that set up, now I'm going to add these two textures here and these two textures here. So I'm going to hold the A key on my keyboard and left click. I'm just going to plug these guys in. Did I create a copy there? Nope. Okay. There we go. I'm going to plug this in here and plug this in here. And now I'm going to clamp these two because the image that they're producing is too white. It's too washed out. So I'm going to use a clamp So I'm going to plug this in here, and we can see our image over here. And I'm going to give it two values, a minimum and a maximum. I'm going to plug it into the min, plug it into the max, and I'm going to give the minimum a value of 0.25 or 25%, and the maximum a value of 0.75 or 75%. Now that we have these nodes set up, I'm going to move these up a bit like this to better organize them. And then I'm going to multiply these nodes. So let me move this to the side since I'm sort of moving into myself. I'm going to hold the M key down and multiply. And now we can see our new image, but it has the color of blue in it. So in order to remove that blue, we need to create a desaturation. So I'm going to plug this multiply into the top node here. And you'll see that our color blue has been washed out, but this makes our texture too dark, which we'll be using as a specular. So the reflective surface won't look very nice. So we have to multiply this yet again. And let's give this a value of 0.5. Or a value of 5, actually. And pretty much this value here can determine how bright or how dull or reflective this surface can be. So if I change the value to 10, you can see this becomes whiter, which in turn will become more reflective on our specular surface. So if you want to adjust the reflective surface of your water to taste, just change this value. So now that our specular and distortion is completed, now we just plug these in, both into the specular and the distortion. So, this mouse is... I need to get a new mouse, guys, so I apologize. So I'm going to go like this, and into the specular. And the effect we achieve is if we look our water in the angle, you can see that it has a reflective surface. Now if I remove the normals, you can see that the material that we created looks like this. So this is what we actually created with all those nodes that we just did. So I'm going to re-plug in my normals. I'm going to compile this. And I'm going to give my water a little test watch. And as we can see, our water has a reflective surface. You can see how the sun is reflecting off this water. And if we go on this side, the reflections go away, so it's based off which direction the sun is hitting the water. Alright, so that's all set up. So now we're going to add a linear interpret actor, which determines all the surfaces that are hitting the water's edges to create a texture. So we're going to create a bubble texture that will go along the sides and edges of any static mesh, terrain, or object you place in the water. So I'm going to comment this really quick over here as soon as Unreal stops acting lame. Oh, there we go. I'm going to name this Specular and Distortion to keep everything organized. I'm going to move this diffuse up. Make this look nice and pretty. Whoops. This mouse is, you can see how this mouse is reacting. And I can't even select everything. There we go. Alrighty. So first, we're going to have to detach our diffuse because it's going to be working with our linear interpret actor. Now I'm going to move up here, and I'm going to type in line to bring up my linear interpret actor, since it filters that out. And we're going to be creating a depth bias by field, or depth bias by alpha, I mean. We're going to plug this into the alpha, and we're going to give this alpha constant of 1, like this. Next, I'm going to create a constant. Oops, there we go. Alternatively, I could just hold 1 on the keyboard and left click, and it will create the same value. Oh, this mouse is... I'm going to buy a new mouse today. It's got to be done. Alrighty. And from here, we get to import one last texture, which is our bubbles. Now I'm going to place my bubbles here and make duplications. Alright. So with our first 2 bubbles, I'm going to create some panner nodes for the 2 bottom ones. So duplicate this, create a panner here, and create a panner here. Let me maximize this window. Now I'm going to give this value of, oh, I don't know, 0.136, I suppose. And give this a value of 0.002. And actually, I'm going to create a rotator here, which is going to rotate the button, rotate the bubbles. And I'm going to leave the rotation as is, but just going to change this value to 0.008. Now I'm going to create a texture coordinate to stretch out this texture, make it a little bigger. Put this in the coordinates. Change it to the values of 2. Stretch it out evenly. And lastly, put a time node so that they move perfectly. Oop, there you go. So now that I have all that, I'm going to adjust this a little bit, my little workspace. I'm going to put some constants in here because our color for the bubbles are too dark. So I'm going to make them a little whiter. I'm going to give this a value of 2 and this a value of 5. And then I'm going to multiply these 2. Whoops. There we go. So I'm going to plug this into the A, plug this into the B, multiply this as well. Alright, so now we're outputting these 2 new images here. And now I'm going to multiply these guys. And multiply them by the value of 0.5. So, as soon as my mouse decides to work, there we go. Multiply this. There we go. And then a 0.5. So then, now that we have this texture completed, we're going to work on this texture now. So I'm going to add to this texture a multiply and a panner. There we go. Plug this in here, and plug this in here. And then I'm going to give this panner, I guess, a value of 0.01, and create a time node. If it will let me. There we go. And then I'm going to create a texture coordinate. Plug this in here. And give it a value of 0.8 by negative 0.8. And I'm going to create a constant. Plug this into the A and convert it into a parameter. I'm going to name it bubble tile. And I'm going to give it a value of 10. And now I'm going to multiply this by the value of 30, because our color is once again too dark. And this is all going to plug in into a multiply. So I'm going to slide this in here and slide this in here. Oops. And then I'm going to multiply this with a value of 4. And I'm going to slide this into the A. So our bubbles are almost done. And when we did this example in class, we ran into a problem where, where all the bubbles were a bit pixelated. So we had to soften the edges to clean that up. So I'm just going to plug this into my diffuse. Well, there we go. And I'm going to create the variables in which I used to fix it up. So I used a subtract, which I then multiplied with the value of 4.8. I'm going to slap that in there. Plug this into the multiply with a constant 5.1. and then create a power to intensify the effect. Of this component mask. Oops. There we go. Which I am going to remove the green channel from, so only the red channel is there. Takes a while for it to happen. Come on, you can do it. See if it works if I check. Okay, that worked. And that. There we go. And I'm going to create the constant. Put it in the, whoops, in the XP. And give it a value of 0.1. And then plug this into the base, which goes into our multiply for our bubble texture, which is all this stuff. And then this goes into the bias. So when I compile this, we can see the bubbles ever so slightly on our edge. So if we want to expand the detail of our bubbles, just click the depth bias alpha in our bubbles near our lerp and just give this a value of like 16. Hit the check mark. And there you go. So that's how you create water in all of its details. If this mouse would give me a chance to work here. So you can see our bubbles are there. Our water is now working with our reflective surface of the sun. And there you go. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll look forward to our next session.